Hey, Tommy, we live in interesting times, and by interesting, I mean interesting.
Well, yeah, so we are in a car market where some cars are selling like hotcakes and other cars are sitting around on dealer lots for an extended period of time. And in this video, we are outlining the top 10 slowest selling cars in the industry.
And how are we measuring that?
Well, there is a research firm called Black Book who has combined all the data. They've looked at the cars, what's selling, what's not, and they have compiled a list of how long cars sit on a lot before they sell. And the top 10 cars are sitting on lots for 99 days or more.
Yeah, and so in typical TFL fashion, we're going to give you the top 10 slowest selling cars because they're sitting on dealer lots the longest. So let's get right to it. What is number 10, Tommy?
Number 10 is the Alfa Romeo Giulia, 99 days sitting on lots. Now, the Giulia is the small sports sedan from Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo's got some big updates coming on a lot of their lineups, so maybe we'll see some big improvements across Giulia, Stelvio, that kind of thing, but not a great result from the Giulia.
Well, and obviously the reason we're putting this list together is not just because we want to highlight which cars, aren't selling, but because these are cars that you probably could get a deal on. If you go to a local dealership and they've had the car on the lot for a while, they might be willing to actually help you buy it by giving you a lower price on it, or the manufacturer might be incentivized to actually put some money on the hood.
That's right. GMC Terrain is the next vehicle on the list at 102 days of sitting on lot. That's their smaller crossover SUV.
And a lot of these cars, of course, like the Giulia, have been around for a while, so they tend to be cars that are kind of later into their life cycle.
Well, and a lot of these cars that are quite honestly up for facelift or update very shortly. For example, the BMW X2, 105 days of sitting on lots, that comes in at a number 8 spot. And that X2, right, is due for a revamp here. We've just seen the pictures of the new X2. Looks great. We have a new BMW X1, you might notice. So X2 is coming up. So perhaps that's a reason why these cars aren't selling as well, because there's a new one just around the corner.
Yeah, the other thing about the X2 is it's kind of in a weird place. It's a perfectly small and presentable and usable crossover for Europe, but for America, I think it just is a little bit too small for most people. So it doesn't exactly fit into the way that people use crossovers here.
Number 7 is also a small car, the Mini Countryman. The best-selling Mini in the lineup is currently averaging 105 days sitting on lots. Now, there is an electric Countryman coming. We've seen images. We've seen the new interior, the new exterior. Countryman's a great little car. Pretty good space for the size of the vehicle, but it's expensive. It's a premium car, and 105 days on lots is not a great result.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think you'll notice in this list is some of these cars have a reputation, and I'm not pointing fingers here, but have a reputation for not being the most reliable. We've owned a lot of Minis, and they do well, but they can be expensive to maintain, and when things break, it gets like I said, it gets rather expensive to fix them.
Well, the other interesting thing is there's not a single Japanese automaker on this list. Number 6 on the list is the Jaguar F-Type, also averaging 105 days of sitting on lots.
Yeah, there's a beautiful yellow one at our local Jaguar dealership that we drive by every time we go to the airport, and part of me just yearns to have a Jaguar F-Type, but the issue is a couple of years ago now, it feels like yesterday, I forgot about COVID, they refreshed it, they gave it a BMW power plant, but that car just never captured the magic of the original, sporty Jaguar sports cars.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
You don't think so?
I think the reason that it is on this list is because it's a two-door two-seater, which is just a hard car to sell in this market. Now, that isn't to say there are plenty that aren't on this list, like the Corvette. So perhaps, that's a sign that Chevrolet really hit the nail on the head. But yeah, two-seater, two-door cars, just not a hot segment. And it's also been announced that the F-Type is being discontinued. So that's perhaps another reason. It's just too old, and people don't want to purchase it.
Yeah, there's a final edition, but like I say, I just don't think Jaguar captured the magic of its heritage with the F-Type. And I love that car. The rub that people have against it is that the exterior styling is beautiful, but the interior is just kind of boring.
Number 5 on the list is a car that has recently been redone. That's the BMW X7,
Ooh.
the full-size 3-row luxury BMW, averaging 110 days sitting on lots. Now, once again, another trend on this list is these tend to be pretty premium vehicles. So Jaguar, BMW, right, all on the list all selling expensive vehicles, and the X7 is certainly an expensive vehicle.
You know, it's interesting. If you count the Mini, there are actually 4 BMWs on this list, and I think it's probably too early to say, but maybe the very polarizing, let's use that word, design language that BMW is currently using to design and style their cars is not hitting well in the marketplace. I mean, a lot of people love it, but a lot of people look at the new BMW, you know, there's just this intersection. It's just a lot of design. And people are like, I'm not sure this is what a BMW should be. Having said that, the recent Neue class, the new class, is much more elegant. So maybe BMW is already rethinking its current design language.
Okay, next up on the list is the Audi A4, averaging 115 days sitting on lots. Once again, relatively an older design as well. Audi A4 is a great car, good all-wheel drive system, very capable, but it's just not appealing to U.S. sales right now. 115 days on lots. But if you want a deal on an A4, now might be the time to take advantage of that.
Well, once upon a time, the A4 and the BMW 3 Series ruled the roost when it came to kind of the mid-size sedans, European luxury sedans. And then Tesla came along with the Model 3 and just completely wiped the board with them. And now when people think of that class of car, they think of Teslas, they think of basically much more electronic cars, much more electric cars, as opposed to the old-fashioned kind of German luxury.
Well, I think the big issue with the A4 is it came out in 2016 and it has been facelifted a couple times, but it is an 8-year-old car, so it's time for that to be replaced if you were to ask me. Now, the Buick Encore GX is coming in the number 3 spot, averaging 120 days. The only Buick on the list, but not the only General Motors product, because the GMC we saw at the number 9 slot. The Encore GX, small, turbocharged, entry-level crossover from Buick, but clearly it's not necessarily resonating. If you do want a cheap way to get an all-wheel drive semi-luxury crossover, the Encore GX is a good option. I think it shares this platform, if I remember right, with the Trailblazer, but yeah, not a great result from the Encore GX.
Well, I think the other problem is it's a Buick, and Buick's kind of lost in the woods right now. I think the Buick is struggling for a brand identity, and it's certainly not top of mind when people think of, well, what car do I want? You know, if you're under the age of 60, Buick probably does not come up on your top 5 list.
Probably not, no. But, you know, interesting. Very few American brands on this list. Actually, GM's going to come up at number 2 as well. We'll talk about it in a second. But there's no Ford on the list. No Stellantis products as far as I can tell. Oh, no, Alfa Romeo. Okay, so only no Ford products. But no Korean brands whatsoever. No Japanese brands whatsoever. Very interesting. Number 2 on the list is the GMC Yukon, averaging 127 days sitting on lots. Once again, a vehicle which could be due for a facelift, a large 3-row luxury SUV. I think one of the Yukon's issues is it's gotten very expensive, easily on a typical one, stretching into the $70,000+ territory, and maybe they've just outpriced themselves from the market.
Yeah, you know, GMC has tried to kind of define the Denali version of whatever GMC as the premium, but then you're kind of bumping up against Cadillac, right, with the Escalade, and that's a problem. And then, of course, I think if you're looking at that segment of vehicle, GM also sells the Tahoe and the Suburban, which basically, you know, are the same vehicles with, you know, a much lower price point. So maybe we're past, you know, we've kind of hopefully maybe gotten past that point where the most expensive version of whatever SUV you're selling is the one that people want. Maybe now people are becoming more price conscious, and this is an expression of that.
And the number 1 car on the list, 131 days sitting on lots, is the BMW iX, the new fully electric large crossover from BMW. It's actually one of my favorite cars from a driving standpoint, but the exterior design is polarizing, the price is high, and the range is not quite up there with some of its competitors. And that's the longest car, at least on this list, that we see.
Yeah, so that car certainly is a lot of everything, right? It's both a hybrid, it's both electrified, it's got a giant, BMW power plant, and it's got a giant grille. And maybe once again, we've reached the end of how big the schnoz on a car can get before people start to say, oh my God, that's just way too big. I think Lexus with the spindle grille certainly is there, and I think BMW may have gone one bridge too far with those giant kidney grill, especially at night when they're lit up. It just seems like, it's like I say, one nose too far.
It might be. I mean, it's got a lot of great technology. It's got a soundtrack by Hans Zimmer, if I remember correctly.
It's also very expensive.
It is very
I
expensive.
want to say, what, 100? Our tester was $160,000.
I'm not sure if ours was quite that expensive, Dad, but certainly easy to get over $100,000. And I don't believe it qualifies for the tax credit that a lot of other EVs do qualify for. So yeah, it's a challenging one for me because I love it from an engineering standpoint, from an integration standpoint. It drives very well. I don't like the design very much, and I don't like the price tag very much. So I think that really is what's hurting the iX.
Anyway, if you guys are in the market for any of these cars, now might be a good time to visit your local dealership because, if the car's sitting on the lot, like I said at the beginning of the show, they might be interested in actually moving it, and you might be able to get a deal on your dream car. And the other thing a lot of these, Tom, you have in common, not all of them, but a lot of them, is they're all over $50,000.
Well, I was just about to say that, Dad. You're right. I mean, they're all fairly expensive vehicles. There's a couple exceptions, like the Terrain and the Countryman are probably going to be the lowest price, but we don't see any of the bargain basement cars on this list, like Corollas, like Kia Rios, that kind of class, like Hyundai Venues, right? The more affordable end of the segments seem to be selling. But some of these more expensive vehicles, they're having a hard time shifting.
Yeah, and I would say, on the other end of the spectrum, cars with a lot of personality still have a huge weight for them. I'm thinking about cars like the Ford Maverick, right? The little tiny pickup truck,
Yep.
Still giant weight. The Ford Bronco, right? These are cars that kind of express who you are, or they're very affordable. And I just picked Ford because those were the two that came to mind. There's other brands that, also have hot sellers that people are dying to buy. So maybe what's happening is the market is shifting a little more from kind of just straight up people movers to cars that express who people think or are.
Well, we're also seeing no trucks at all on this list. So even though trucks are also insanely expensive, not a single one has made it onto this list, at least according to Black Book. But guys, let us know what you think in the comment section below. We would love to hear your opinions. We read your comments and get a perspective to see what you guys have to say.
Yeah, and check out TFL.com for all of our news and views, of course, with the strike continuing for the 3 domestics. We're going to keep our eye on what that's doing to inventories, and I know the answer. They're declining rapidly for American brands, and that's going to also affect the used market as well as the new car market. So, we'll bring you up to date on the latest and greatest in new and used car buying as soon as we have it at alltfl.com. See you guys next time. Ciao.